So, national advertisers in particular started to pull their ads and put them on the radio, sponsor radio shows. And then, of course, as I said, television and the internet really put a major dent into newspaper ad revenue. This is the first banner that ran in Wired magazine some time ago. Newspapers tried to fight back, notably via the first, quote, national newspaper, unquote, USA Today, published first by the Gannett Company in the early 80s. This is one of the first ads they ran, trying to compete with TV. This is, of course, before the internet really came along. This ad was created by one of our professors here at FIT, by the way. And here's USA Today again. The gentleman in the middle is named Al Newharth, who was the chairman and CEO of the Gannett Company, at that point the largest newspaper company in the U.S. And USA Today launched in 1982. Full color, satellite transmitted news, printed in different printing centers across the U.S. so they could distribute quickly into all the major cities. Not a lot of long stories that went page to page. They tended to be shorter and not continued in other parts of the newspaper. Start on the front page and then finish on the back page. Highest readership was 6.6 million in 1991. They launched a website in 1995. By the way, I worked for the Gannett Company, folks. From 1986 to 1996, I was the head of business development for the outdoor advertising division, the Gannett Company. So billboards, bus shelters, subway advertising. My job was to get new national advertisers to go into outdoor. They had left the medium over the years for other opportunities, i.e. newspapers, radio, and TV. And Al Newharth was finishing up his reign at running Gannett Outdoor. At the time I joined the company in '86. He was a very influential guy. And I actually, when he retired from Gannett, the company had kept an apartment for him at the Waldorf Towers, which is one of the most elegant addresses in New York. And employees in the New York office were invited to come over to the apartment as it was being, shut down and everything moved out of it, to bid on different items of furniture. And I was the only one to bid on his desk. I got it for $150. It looked like an aircraft carrier made out of white marble, let's put it that way, white marble top. Beautiful desk I had for my whole career at Gannett Outdoor. They let me have that desk in my office. Moving right along, of course, again, the internet taking over classified ad section for newspapers, for instance. We'll talk about that more in just a second. Newspapers, financially damaging, a lot of that because of the classified ads. Classified ads are like help wanted ads. Obviously, you don't go to the newspaper to look for a job these days. And when I first moved to New York, that's how you found a job. You looked in the help wanted ads. You found an apartment by looking in the real estate section. You found a car by looking in the auto section. You could find used cars, for instance. And that's not where you look anymore to find those things. Only 10% of Americans 18 to 34 use printed newspapers as a primary news source. So all these other media have had a real effect on newspapers. And here's the decline in revenue. Sources, the Newspaper Association of America. So those are in billions of dollars. So from a high of over 60 billion, way down now to under 20 billion. So newspapers have lost ad revenue. And so this is what happens when you lose revenue at a mass medium. You can't afford to pay your people. So the red bar there shows the numbers of reporters or editors employed by newspapers declining from about 2006. This is through 2015. So this is what's happening, folks. 1923, 502 American cities had 2 or more competing dailies. Today that number totals fewer than 12, which have separate competing different ownership papers. Very good article here in the New Yorker magazine. We'll talk about magazines for next week. That'll be our last specific medium discussion right before our midterm, excuse me. So what happens as there are no more reporters to cover, in this case, is local news. And what you read about in this really good piece here is that no one's, shining a light on what's going on in the local governments. So could be some monkey business in this particular story in the New Yorker magazine. We have freedom of press, but when there aren't any reporters and no journalists and no investigative journaling, what good does that do us? All right, we don't have that balancing point between the government and big business and the rest of us to try to shine a light when people aren't honest. Again, it's all on Craigslist. That's where the real estate ads are. And we know where the jobs are. They're on Indeed.com. Right, guys? Right. Okay. So newspapers have converged. Marriage of the web and newspapers. Well, it's not true, really, because the New York Times is doing pretty well with it. The problem, though, is that analog dollars. Newspapers could charge a lot more for ads in printed newspapers than they can for ads in their digital editions. That's just the way it is. It's cheaper to run a digital ad than it is a printed paper ad. So this is about the content now. Here's how people, adults, this would be 18 plus. This is where adults are getting their news in terms of social media sites. Facebook is leading in terms of being a source of news. We've looked at the digital edition of the New York Times. I took you briefly through it. My edition, $15 a month. Recipes, $5 a month. And by the way, the Wirecutter's $5.95 a month. Wirecutter's $5 a month. So now I'm paying $15 plus $5.95 plus plus $5 for the Wirecutter. And I could get a free subscription through FIT, but do I do it? No. Do I want to give a little revenue for the New York Times because it's so wonderful and I love it? Yes. Am I a sucker? Yes. Regular student editions, $4 a month. Of course, for us, that's for digital. For us folks at FIT, it's free. If you want the home delivery of the printed edition, $36 a month. Costs a lot of money to print that paper and to send people out to leave it at your door. Okay, and again, New York Times is really building its digital subscription, and it's really a national paper. They've done well with it. Originally, they did not have what's called a paywall. In other words, and this is what a lot of newspapers and magazines did. They offered their content for free. They were just so nervous and scared whether anybody would want it. Times put in a paywall. You got to pay. You ain't getting that news for free. You could have a couple articles a month for free, by the way. I think it's about 3. And after that, you got to pay. Of course, a big issue having to do with the internet is, I don't even want to say it, just read it. But hey, folks, some people who complain about FN, they complain about FN being in newspapers. It ain't really true, folks. Editorial folks, editors at newspapers, are very careful about vetting and fact-checking articles. Why? Because they're subject to lawsuits for libel. They say if they intend to malign someone and they publish negative information that isn't true and they've intended to take somebody down, that's libel, and you can be sued for a lot of money for that. I can tell you people will take you to court and put you out of business in some cases. So where's the real FN? Well, it's in the places where there are no editors, i.e. social media. I'm going to stop now, and I want you to watch an ad that was produced by the Washington Post, another very prominent newspaper based in Washington, D.C., which, by the way, is now owned by Jeff Bezos. And this ad was produced. One of the things he did early on after acquiring the newspaper was create this ad, which ran on the Super Bowl, having to do with FN reporters in newspapers.